$9 trillion in market valuation has evaporated from the artificial intelligence sector this year alone. You clicked on this video because you sense that behind the hype lies a dangerous strategic reality. The US appears to be winning the design war while losing the physical supply chain battle, effectively funding its own long-term obsolescence against China. By the end of this analysis, you will understand why this boom is not an economic victory, but a resource scramble where leverage has shifted from intellectual property to raw infrastructure control. The prevailing narrative suggests that American dominance in chip design guarantees sustained strategic advantage. This view relies on the assumption that creating the blueprint for an advanced processor is sufficient to maintain power. It assumes that because firms like NVIDIA and AMD develop the architecture, they control the outcome of global competition. However, this perspective ignores a critical shift in where actual leverage resides within the hardware ecosystem. The ability to design a chip matters less if you cannot manufacture it at scale or power the data centers required to run them. Consider the current market dynamics documented by recent academic research on AI trading and bubbles. Studies analyzing behavioral finance patterns indicate that investor exuberance is driven heavily by recency-weighted extrapolation rather than fundamental physical constraints. When algorithms detect rising prices, they automatically buy more based on past performance, creating a feedback loop of speculation. This behavior has fueled valuations in firms like TSMC and NVIDIA to levels where market analysis identifies clear bubbles using robust date-stamping methods for periods of exuberance. These financial models show that the current boom is largely a valuation phenomenon driven by sentiment rather than verified infrastructure realities or confirmed physical bottlenecks. Yet, beneath this layer of algorithmic trading lies a deeper structural vulnerability. The United States maintains a monopoly on design IP but has ceded sovereignty over the physical supply chain components essential for scaling production. Advanced packaging technologies, copper interconnects, and high-density power distribution systems are increasingly dominated by Chinese manufacturing capacity. This creates a strategic asymmetry where American firms hold the blueprints but lack direct control over the factories that turn silicon into functional hardware. The result is a hollow infrastructure that cannot scale without external dependency on foreign entities for foundational physical constraints like silicon yield and thermal dissipation. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. The true bottleneck of this AI boom is not software or algorithms, but energy scarcity. Data centers require massive amounts of power to function, and the grid infrastructure supporting them faces severe strain. American facilities are increasingly forced to rely on imported grid components and cooling technologies that trace their origins back to Chinese supply chains. This dependency creates a strategic vulnerability where U.S. operations cannot expand without importing critical hardware from potential adversaries. The energy-intensive nature of modern compute clusters means that whoever controls the power delivery network holds significant leverage over who can actually run AI models at scale. Export control regimes have attempted to address this by restricting access to advanced chips, but these measures are proving less effective than anticipated because they focus on design rather than physical volume. China has responded not by matching American performance in cutting-edge nodes, but by scaling legacy node manufacturing rapidly. These older processors require less sophisticated architecture yet remain physically abundant and highly efficient for specific workloads. By building energy-intensive compute clusters using vast quantities of these chips, Chinese entities can achieve AI parity or dominance through sheer volume rather than superior design architectures. This strategy bypasses the intent of export controls by flooding the market with functional hardware that does not require the most advanced lithography equipment. Investment flows have further complicated this dynamic. Capital is currently misallocated toward speculative software layers while foundational physical constraints are being ceded to foreign entities. Companies pour billions into building applications and models, assuming that the underlying compute infrastructure will remain secure and available in perpetuity. This assumption ignores the reality of resource scarcity. When silicon yield rates drop or energy grids fail due to congestion, These investments become stranded assets dependent on external supply chains they cannot control. The failure to secure physical production capacity means the U.S. is inadvertently funding the very infrastructure that allows competitors to scale independently. The shift in leverage from design capability to physical resource control represents a fundamental change in geopolitical strategy. Historically, innovation hubs held power because they could create new technologies faster than anyone else. Today, the ability to manufacture and sustain those technologies at massive scales determines who wins. The U.S. approach of focusing on intellectual property while outsourcing production has created a dangerous gap between theoretical capability and practical execution. This dynamic suggests that market valuations based on design dominance may not reflect actual strategic power in a resource-constrained environment. The evidence from financial modeling shows us clearly where the bubbles exist, but it does not tell us everything about physical realities. The academic sources confirm that speculative behavior is driving prices, yet they do not validate claims of imminent supply chain collapse or specific export control impacts on long-term leverage. This creates a critical gap in our understanding. We must distinguish between verified market volatility and unproven geopolitical thesis regarding hardware scarcity. However, the structural reliance on foreign manufacturing for advanced packaging and power distribution remains a tangible risk, regardless of whether current valuations are inflated by algorithmic trading behaviors. The ultimate insight here concerns the nature of sovereignty in an interconnected economy. Control over design does not equate to control over outcomes when the physical means of production lie outside your borders. The U.S. strategy has prioritized speed and innovation, assuming that market forces would keep supply chains fluid and secure. This assumption is failing because it treats hardware as a commodity, rather than a strategic resource subject to geopolitical manipulation. As energy demands grow and manufacturing capacity concentrates in rival nations, the cost of this oversight will become impossible to ignore. The convergence of speculative valuation with physical dependency creates a perilous situation for long-term national security. Investors chasing returns based on behavioral biases may not notice that their portfolio relies on infrastructure they cannot guarantee. The U.S. is inadvertently ceding leverage by failing to control the physical supply chain rather than just protecting design IP. This strategic blind spot risks turning economic dominance into a vulnerability where competitors can outspend or outlast American firms through sheer volume and resource efficiency. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.